All right, guys, thank you for joining me today on Instinctive Addiction Archery. I'm Jeff Phillips. Got a good tech tip for you here today by request. I've had several people ask me about setting up their ILF bows. Initially, how to tune them, how to get them set up out of the box, okay? When I introduced even this one that I have now, this Enlita X10 here, this bow is definitely a favorite of mine, but all ILF bows need to be tweaked. Okay, guys, if you're going to shoot one off the shelf like I do, and that's been the most asked question, Jeff, how do I get my ILF bow from the time I get it out of the box and put it together? How do I get this thing tuned to shoot my arrows good and to be as quiet as it can? Okay, well, first, guys, I want to share the most important part to initially getting your arrow tune in order. Okay, so 9 out of 10 machined aluminum riser bows like this one are cut well past center. And guys, what I mean by that, very center line. Even if you look at the slots here, you can tell this is center of the riser. If you see the holes there, this is dead center. If there were a line down this riser, that is dead center. Okay, so when they are cut past center, means they are actually cut beyond the center line of the bow. They're cut past it. They're machined out past that. So what happens naturally when you load an arrow into one, your arrow is going to be pointed off to the right. In other words, if you're looking down the bow, down your arrow is going to be off to the right. If you were to shoot off just a raw shelf, your arrows would impact significantly to the right. Okay, not even anywhere near being able to get spined. Okay, so what I mean by that, these bows are designed, if you'll notice, it'd be a Satori, pretty much any ILF aluminum riser bow is going to be machined, and it's going to be drilled and tapped for a rest and a plunger, because these bows are initially designed to be capable for guys that want to shoot a rest, what we call an elevated rest, whether it be even a flipper style that sticks on, or an absolute rest with a plunger button. Okay, so you have that capability. But if you don't want to shoot off of a rest and you just want to shoot straight off the shelf like a wooden traditional bow like I do, you have to do a few things. What I've got done on mine, and this is what everybody's been asking me, guys, so I want to address this. How do you build yours up? Well, what I did was I had a piece of leather. I had a piece of adhesive back leather. I have just a collection of all kinds of materials and things, and it really doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's not too hard. But I took a piece of leather, and even if you glue it on, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a traditional bow. Who cares? But mine is about 1/16 of an inch thick. It's about a 16th. Then by the time I had this little leather plate on here, I overlaid it with 15-pound Velcro. Okay, so that gave me about a solid 1/8 of an inch. You can see there, guys, about 1/8 of an inch strike plate. I built up my strike plate about 1/8 of an inch. And what that did was it brought my center shot way over. It allowed me to tune my favorite arrow, which is a 500. Now, could I have shot 400s out of this bow? Yes, as far as it was cut past center, and this is a 45-pound bow. I could have, because it's so far past center that it's really not flexing the arrow. There's not a lot of paradox. Your arrows are just not dealing with a lot of paradox. See, these are 500 go tips, and with 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch built up, my arrow is now, if I look straight down the string, my arrow is just slightly pointing left, which is what you want. That way you get a little bit of something for that arrow to bend around. Okay, that's what I did with mine. Now, you can play with a variety of arrows depending on what pound limbs you have, whether it be 600s, 700s, 500s, 400s, it doesn't matter. The point is, you can manipulate a lot of the arrows that you already have. Let's just say you already own arrows, whether it be 400s or 500s or 600s, and you really want to use those arrows. Really windy out here today, guys. But anyway, let's just say you want to use those arrows that you have. Well, you can actually manipulate your arrow tune as far as left and right tail impact on a bear shaft at your target. You can tune an arrow to these rests by how much strike plate material you build out and how much that the arrow develops what we call paradox, which is wrapping around the riser when you release, okay? So, the less you have, the stiffer the spine you can get by with. The thicker you build it up, the more weaker spined arrow that will actually want to tune out of the bow. So you can do a multitude of tunes with an ILF bow with pretty much any given spine of arrow that you have. You can make a lot of them work, guys. Okay, so that's what I did. Now, as far as the shelf itself, I did one little trick, and you can't see this, but I was taught this trick by one of my really good shooter friends. He wins a lot of 3D tournaments. And anyway, this was one of his secrets that he shared with me. Underneath, you can see that little wear mark on my Velcro. You see that little tiny little piece that's sticking up right there, that little tiny gap? That's because I have got, if you guys have ever seen the heavy toothpicks from the craft department, your bigger toothpicks, I took one of those and I just clipped off a little piece. A wooden matchstick is almost too thick, okay, and it's not round. But I took a little round toothpick, one of the bigger ones, clipped it off, and I put it under that bottom shelf. Why did I do that? Why does he do it? Because it's a good little trick, guys. You want your arrow to have very minimal contact. The less that material that your arrow is touching, the better, the cleaner release you're going to get. So it looks like my arrow is just sitting on that piece of Velcro, right? It looks like it is. But it is actually sitting on that little piece of toothpick with the little hump that's in it now. It's got a tiny hump under my shelf plate. So the arrow makes minimal contact right there, guys, see? So that's just a neat little trick. And as you can see, that's how I've got mine built out, about 1/8 of an inch. About 1/8 of an inch. And these 500s bear shafted perfect. They really did. Guys say all the time, they ask me, how far do I need to bear shaft? How far do I need to step back? Anything less than 15 yards, you're not going to get an accurate reading. Arrows leave the bow in what we call paradox. In other words, they wrap around the shelf. They are wiggling. They're basically in recovery mode, I would call it, for probably the first 10 yards that it leaves the bow. And then it suddenly corrects itself a little bit, decides which way it's going to go, left or right. The way that the arrow is leaving the bow and naturally wanting to point is going to tell at about 15 yards. 20 yards is even better. So I do my bear shafting no less than 15 yards, and I really get an accurate reading of the tail end of that shaft, if it's left or right, high, low, what's going on with it. Okay, that's one thing with an ILF bow setup. Guys, here's you something else to chew on. Okay. So many people have ordered even these particular bows here that I have, this Sanlita bow. So many guys have ordered these bows, and they've asked me, okay, what about my tiller bolts? What do I need to do to set this thing up right? Well, the first thing that I ask them is, what is your shooting style? Are you shooting 3 fingers under, or are you shooting split finger? Because there's a major difference in how you need to set your bow up, guys. It is. It's called tiller. And a lot of people don't even know what bow tiller is. So I'll briefly explain that to you guys for the ones that are not familiar with tiller, and maybe you've come over from Compound World, just now getting your recurve or wanting to get into it, and you don't really know what this term means. The tiller of the bow is the distance between the top limb in the string and the bottom limb in the string, okay? These two measurements are very critical because they determine the amount of pressure that is going to be put on each of your shooting fingers. In other words, if a bow is set what we call positive tiller, meaning there is a little more gap between the top limb and the string than the bottom limb, that's called a positive tiller. How much of that do you want in your bow when you're setting it? About 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 of an inch is really, really good. It will allow you to shoot 3 fingers split. Shoot split finger with a very quiet shot with no finger pinch, okay? In other words, if you have a positive tiller, means you have a little bit less power coming out of the top limb than you do the bottom. Well, why would you want that? And I've been asked that. Okay, Jeff, explain to me what you mean by that. Okay, guys, think about it this way. Center of the bow is right here. This is center, right here in this throat of this grip. Not up here where the arrow's at. This is the center of the bow. Well, guess what? Your hand is way above this. When you're gripping a string, you're way, way above it, especially split finger, right? That would mean you would be outworking the top limb over the bottom limb. You would be far out pulling the top limb than you would the bottom limb. So it makes sense on an ILF bow to back your tiller bolt out just a little bit more, maybe even a quarter to a half of a turn more than you have the bottom, to give you that what we call positive tiller. Now, if you're shooting 3 fingers under, then guess what, guys? 3 fingers under, instead of being up here, and this is being center of the bow. Now you're getting closer to center, right? Lots closer. So now you're pulling way more equally on both limbs, way more equally. Therefore, you want to set your tiller bolts even. You want to set them even. You can even go what we call negative tiller for 3 under if you have a relatively big hand, big fingers, a wide spread. Okay, everybody's hand's not the same. So you can't say, well, my tiller needs to be this and my tiller needs to be that for the same person. Okay, I mean for 2 different people, because nobody's hands are alike. In other words, the mass, the distance that a big guy's hand will be down this string is much greater than a guy with small hands will be, okay? So he will be now working the bottom limb more than the top. What would you need to do? You would need to slightly back out the limb bolt a little bit more on the bottom limb and get what we call a negative tiller. That way, you will not be outworking the bottom limb over the top limb. So the guys, the deal is with this is when a bow shoots its best is when both limbs work in exact equal harmony. When they both release and cast at the same rate of speed with the same power. That's how you get a smooth, quiet bow. That is the trick to it, guys. So setting up an ILF bow is very easy. It truly is, because it depends on your shooting style and you can play with it. This particular bow that I have here, I actually got mine much quieter than it was initially. When I first got the bow, I bottomed both limb bolts out and went out and shot it. And it shot great, and it wasn't loud, but it wasn't as quiet as I wanted it to be. I silenced it up, and it was, to me, great, okay? But then I started experimenting with this very bow because I've done so many of them. And I experimented just a little bit more with this one. And what I did, guys, is I set just a very, very slight negative tiller. Just slightly, because I'm shooting 3 under. And I mean, it's probably a 1/16 of an inch, basically. Maybe a 1/16 inch more from the distance here than it is to on my top limb. Because I'm shooting 3 under, and guess what? The bow was really, really quiet, and it felt so good. There is something else that comes into play. It's called finger pressure. It's what you prefer. So guys, you can play with the tiller on a bow, and the more shooting, let's just say shooting split finger, 3 under, whatever your style is, you can actually adjust by your tiller bolts how much pressure you want on this finger, this one here. In other words, how do you tell where you get that at? Okay, take a bow and just come down way under the arrow like you're going to do a fixed crawl, for instance, and pull on the string. What do you feel? Pretty equal. I mean, it really does feel pretty equal. Come right up under it. Same thing. You're starting to feel just a little bit of pressure on that finger right there. Well, come on up here and do the same thing. It's all on top. It's all on this finger now. It's just the way a bow is. So you've got to find that magic spot that doesn't put extreme pressure on your finger, because where bow noise comes from most of the time is how that string is released. If you get a good clean release, the bow's going to be quiet. But if you're really hanging on that finger and you're really more or less that string's plucking off your hand, it's going to develop a little bit of excess noise, and that's any bow. It doesn't matter if it's a wood longbow, recurve, ILF bow, it doesn't make any difference. That's why sometimes shooting split finger, the shot is generally noticeably quieter than shooting 3-under on any bow. Why? It's because on split finger, the contact that is made is just nowhere near as much as 3 fingers stacked together in one spot, because it is split and you just don't have as much finger to string contact in one place, okay? And it generally is quieter. But there again, if you set your tiller right, if you get it adjusted right, you will not have any problem with noise out of the bow. I can tell you that. Sometimes, guys, just simply backing out the limb bolts, backing the limb bolts out on an ILF bow, even one round, can sometimes make a bow noticeably quieter and smoother. Why? Because you have to think about it. It's like moving your brace height out. As you move this tiller bolt out, these limbs tilt back. You actually start developing slightly less limb contact, just like you would if you ran your brace height out. Okay, mine, I'm going to show you guys as an example. A 45-pound Sanlita Hermit X10. This is what I did to set mine up, and it's as good as it can possibly be. In other words, it cannot shoot any better than it does. As far as arrow tune, accuracy, the sound, the feel on the string, everything about the bow, the balance and the pull, and how my string actually feels in my hand. And I'm running a 16 strand. This is Trevor Triple T sent me this ultra custom string here, and he built me a 16 strand for this bow. I wanted a slightly bigger string because they're just a little bit quieter. They're bundled a little bit heavier. They're a little bit better for the carbon limbs, and I just like the feel of it. I really, really like the feel of it. But guys, I'm running right now dead on 7.5-inch brace height. My bow is on 7.5. Okay. People ask me all the time, what do I need to look for in my brace height? With this particular bow, if I pass 7.5 inches, my bow gets louder. I cannot go all the way down to a 7-inch brace height, and this bow is honestly a touch even quieter. But I start barely getting into my arm, okay? Barely. I'll have to wear an arm guard, and I typically don't, okay? So I'm going with 7.5, and it tunes perfectly. It shoots awesome. So 7.25 may be your magic spot. It may be, all right? My tiller bolts, as I mentioned, and I'm gonna show you guys here. Take a look at them. That one is on 6.5, and this one is on 6, just under 6.5. I mean, a 1/16 of an inch would be absolute maximum that I've got this thing. Call it dead even. If I had to say, what do you call this tiller? Call it an even tiller, because it's so minute that you cannot tell it. Okay, because I shoot 3-under. So if you want to keep things simple, out of the box, and you want to shoot 3-under, no matter how many turns you go in and out, and you're allowed 5, but I don't shoot with 5 rounds out on any ILF bow. I just don't go that far out. I personally just don't trust any of them being that close out. I want way more bolt off in a bow than that, okay? Even though these are extreme high quality risers here, tolerances are perfect, I don't want to take any chances with that. So I usually will take mine all the way down, bottom them completely out, and I may go 1 to 2 rounds out depending on how many pounds I want to take off of mine. Because you can easily drop about 3 pounds off of your pull by going a couple of rounds. So the best thing you can do is bottom it out, measure it, get you a square, measure it, just come right down here to this little part of your limb butt, measure it, see where it's at, do the same thing. There it is. There, I mean, that's almost as even as you can get. So if you have the exact same measurement, you call that an even tiller, you're good to go shooting 3 fingers under the nock. 3 under, even tiller. If you're going to shoot split, allow yourself about 1/8 of an inch more on the top. You want that top limb a little bit weaker than the bottom, okay? Because you're going to be working it harder than you are working the bottom limb. So that's my basic setup, and I'll shoot this thing for you guys one time just to show you. While I got it out here, I just tuned it a while ago. I was extremely happy with it. Tested my bear shaft again, and my bear shaft was just great. So when you have a bear shaft that is shooting really, really well out of a bow, you can expect a fletched arrow to shoot incredibly well. You can just expect it. Finally, nock height. Where do you need to put your nock height? Well, guys, I'm just going to tell you exactly where I've got mine. Here we go. You bring your square down till it touches. There it is. 5/8 of an inch. This is a half. 1/8 more is 5/8. 5/8 of an inch above center. The bottom being center. 5/8 above center is where you want the bottom of your top nock to be, which gives you a little rear elevation. If you look at that, see how that arrow's sitting? That's what you want. That way, when you draw that bow, and it just levels out with 3 fingers under, you can get by with a little bit less shooting split finger. You can get by with about 1/2 of an inch shooting split finger, but 3 under, 5/8 of an inch. If you do those things, even tiller, 5/8 of an inch nock set, build up your strike plate about 1/8 of an inch with arrows that are even close to spining for a 45-pound bow. If you have a 40-pound bow, you can probably shoot 600s. If you do that, guys, you're going to have a very, very easy time setting your bow up. I promise you will, guys. So let's shoot this thing right quick. Let's shoot her right quick, guys. Show you what I got, and then I'll also show you how to adjust your limb bolts. Dead. Boom. All day. These bows are so incredibly easy to shoot. They really are. I'll shoot the other bow. Don't get no better than that. They really don't. Shoot that old bear way back there. Dead in there. I love it, man. Love it. And I usually shoot with a quiver on. I do. I've gotten kind of used to shooting with my quiver loaded and all that, because I love it. I love the weight and stuff. But for 3D, you know, I just took it off to shoot 3D with this bow. But anyway, guys, if you own one of these bows, or a Hoyt Satori, or pretty much any ILF bow on the planet, what you need to do is you need to invest in what's called a little archery set. This is an Allen key set. It's an archery Allen key set. It's no different than any other, except for all the sizes being standard, and they fit these bows. They fit any bows, compounds, ILF bows, whatever. So anyway, all you do to do any adjustment, guys, and this is very important, don't miss this. Put your Allen key in the hole. You have what's called a lock. You hear it go down in there? You have what's called a lock bolt. Now watch this. There she goes. Boy, when you tighten them now, they tight. But that's what you want. All right, you just loosen it up. 1 or 2 rounds. That lock bolt is now loose. If I wanted to adjust my limb in or out to set this tiller here, I would simply put it in just like you would do a compound. and I would look at it, and I would go either a half round or a full round or a quarter round or whatever. If you want to make marks, whatever, as long as you're doing equal turns, you're going to be fine. Now, I'm not going to turn this one because I've got mine set. All right, and I don't want to move it again. So let's just say if I had moved that, I just stick it back down in here till it goes in, and you want to make sure that it gets in there. There it is. It's in now. Tightening it back up. All right. Tighten it really good. There we go. That way, you have no loose, no rattling, no nothing, and those limb bolts cannot move. They're locked. They're in there. They're locked. So, guys, that's it. That's it on your ILF bow setup. Okay? Doesn't matter what kind you got. Yes, you may have to do a little bit of engineering with your rest material, because face it, when you have a riser that is cut past center, you're going to have to build it up. One good thing that I've seen that works is the old school bare rests, the old leather side plate rest. You know, these old traditional rests, they're thick. Okay, they're really thick. They were too thick for the bare bows on the vintage bows to begin with. They made the arrow way too far out. But anyway, every one of the vintage bows I had to take them off and put calf hair on because I couldn't shoot a stiff enough arrow. Okay, so anyway, but they do work great when you need it out. When you need something, you can cut you a piece of that leather strike plate that you can get them from Three Rivers or anywhere else. Get you something like that, and even if you have to put Velcro on top of that, good and fine. Do whatever it takes to make that bear shaft tune perfectly for you, okay? And especially if you already have arrows and you already have a bow and you don't want to buy more arrows, you want to make your arrows work out of an ILF bow, you can manipulate the rest to do that. Why do you think Hoyt, and they're wonderful engineering, by the way, Hoyt sends every genuine Satori. Now, you won't get it with a T-bow. No, you will not. They don't include them. But Hoyt gives you what's called shims. It gives you a side strike plate. It gives you a plastic strike plate with a peg that goes into the hole that just snaps in with a lock screw on the back. But they also give you plastic shims, a whole pack of them, where you can build it out as much as you want to get your arrows to tune. Wonderful, wonderful idea. So you're going to have to do something like that with a bow that doesn't come with them, okay? Like these and like many, many others. That's what you got to do. You just got to tweak yourself a little bit. You're good to go, man. Good to go. So thank you guys for joining me today on Instinctive Addiction Archery. I'm Jeff Phillips. Just praise God for everything that He has done for us, what He's done for this channel, and for every one of you that have subscribed. Thank you so much. I just cannot ever thank you enough for your love and your support, guys. I do. And I only do it because I love doing it. And I got a whole lot of cool stuff coming. New bow coming too, guys. Just sit tight. That's right. We got another one. Three Rivers. I got a new one en route right now. Brand new to the market. Two more behind it too. But I got a new one I can't wait to show you. So anyway, that'll probably be next week, guys. Until next time, God bless you.